All right, thank you so much for joining us here at the First Alert Desk. I'm Maria Moreau, taking you straight out to a live look at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. You can see some of those clouds indicating ongoing gloomy weather. It was much worse overnight and into earlier this morning as hundreds of flights got delayed, some canceled. We can expect some of that to return possibly later this evening as we bring you continued weather coverage and a First Alert weather day we want you to know about. We'll have more of that on the back end, but first I want to get into some of your top stories. Today is a big day for more Metro Atlanta students as they head back to school. Right now, a new school year is starting up for Fulton, DeKalb, and Oglethorpe counties. Congratulations to those students. Our Atlanta News First team has been out in the community all week long and into today as all major Metro Atlanta school districts are now back in class.
Herds Ferry Elementary in Sandy Springs, and I want to show you because we've got our first busload of students arriving. Just a small group here, but look at that. They're excited for the start of the new school year. Now, if you are about to leave the house, Fulton County leaders are asking drivers to please be mindful of students walking to school and getting on and off school buses. Fulton County Schools transportation leaders, as a matter of fact, are teaming up with the Governor's Office of Highway Safety to remind drivers summer vacations are over and students are back to boarding the school buses in neighborhoods all across Fulton County as they head to their school buildings. They especially want parents of teenage drivers, maybe those who are just getting a driver's license, to remind their students you must never pass a stopped school bus and that to be extremely cautious as we approach a school zone.
Obey the speed limit and watch for a child in case they get off the bus and want to run across the road. We just asking everybody to be prepared.
Now, if your commute takes you around the Fulton County Courthouse, you're going to need to find another way. Roads are now closed in anticipation of potential indictments from the Fulton County District Attorney. Now, the investigation is focused on former President Donald Trump, his allies, and the results of the 2020 presidential election. Atlanta News First, Yasmina Alston has what you need to know. And out in Rockdale County, a candlelit vigil is scheduled for this mother of four. You might know her as Amani Robertson, that name becoming all too familiar. After a weeks-long search, authorities found her body over the weekend. Her husband, Donnell Anderson, is now behind bars and accused of killing her. Anderson was denied bond. Atlanta News First reporter Asia Wilson takes you closer.
For the parents of Amani Robertson, their worst fears have now been realized.
I said my goodbyes to my daughter yesterday. And I told her, I promised her when I laid there with Royal, that we will work with whoever we have to, and all people that's involved will be held accountable.
The Rockdale County Sheriff says they located her body in Atlanta on Friday. This after a weeks-long search. The 29-year-old mother of 4 was last seen alive on July 16th after eating dinner with her mother.
After leaving her mother's house, Amani returned home with 2 of her 4 children.
And on July 27th, investigators found her SUV on Metropolitan Parkway in Atlanta, torched from the inside out. And now investigators say the discovery of her body led them to her husband, Donnell Anderson, who is now in custody.
It was clear that foul play was evident in the disappearance of Amani. We spoke to several individuals, collected a number of evidence to include blood in our victim's home and in other places that I won't be specific on.
Sheriff Eric Levitt says another arrest will certainly be made, as there was at least one more person involved. In the meantime, this grieving family now left heartbroken.
We thank you for your continued prayers and support as we work to care for Imani's beautiful boys without a mother.
In Conyers, Bridget Spencer, Atlanta News First.
Yeah, really tragic story there. We'll be continuing to follow the latest on that. I want to take you out to this nationwide emergency alert that you're going to want to know about. This is happening in October. A nationwide emergency alert will be going out as part of a test conducted by FEMA and the FCC. They're scheduling the drill for October 4th to be specifically. To be specific, you can expect your cell phone to receive an alert that reads, "This is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed." So thankfully you won't have to respond or interact, but do be prepared to receive that on your phone October 4th. The reason for the test actually is to make sure that all systems are prepared in the event that there is a nationwide emergency, and we can all appreciate some extra preparation for events that we'll want to keep you updated on. And speaking of that, things are returning back to normal at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport for the most part, but we can expect delays and cancellations to possibly pop back up later on today, as our meteorologists have been telling you on Atlanta News First all morning long and online. If you have the First Alert Weather app, make sure you have it downloaded because storms are coming back. We have meteorologist Courtney Jacobazi here to talk about today's threat.
Yeah, thanks so much, Maria. So today, if you've been keeping up with us, it is a First Alert Weather Day, and we're going to talk about what that means because we haven't had one in a while. The last time, I believe, was in March when we had tornadoes and the tiger got on the loose. Does anyone remember that? Yeah, I think that was the last time we had a First Alert Weather Day. But essentially, it is when we up the ante for our weather that is going to impact you. We think that the weather will have a significant impact on your day, and it could essentially put life and property at risk. And because of how widespread the wind damage can be today, we do think that is a possibility, hence the First Alert Weather Day today. So I am First Alert Meteorologist Courtney Jacobazi. I'm going to take you through everything hour by hour to get you and your family prepared for the storms that will be on the way later tonight. We're going to go through everything in full detail and also talk about heat. Not only is it going to be a stormy evening, it's going to be a very hot day. A handful of us are under a heat advisory starting at noon. So lots to cover clearly. But first, let's talk about the difference between a First Alert and a First Alert Weather Day. Again, since we are fairly new to this whole concept and we haven't used First Alert Weather Day wording in a while, I want to make sure that you just know the difference. So a First Alert is essentially nuisance weather or abrupt changes. We've talked about, we have a lot of First Alerts during the week when we think rain is going to impact your commute. Maybe it's going to be extremely hot outside or dangerously hot outside, or we get a drastic drop in temperatures if there's dense fog for your morning commute. That's when we'll issue a First Alert to kind of just give you a heads up that you're going to run into some sort of nuisance weather throughout the day. First Alert Weather Day is when we have a higher impact event and severe weather is going to be more likely, and it could involve some safety concerns as well, which again, with that potential for damaging winds widespread across the area today, definitely think that can down trees and power lines, and that ultimately will impact your safety for anyone who maybe has any later evening plans tonight, or maybe you work later in the evening. For anyone who works night shifts, that could definitely impact you. So notice along the Atlantic coast, we really have severe weather impacting hundreds and hundreds of miles. A level 4, a moderate risk for severe weather for places like Virginia, where they're expecting damaging wind and maybe even tornadoes. For us here, we're in a level 3, and we've been kind of talking about it throughout the morning. Rodney really said it in a great way to explain it. Most of the summer, we sit in that level 1 to 2 range when it comes to severe weather. A level 3 is not necessarily rare, but not something that we see very often, especially this time of year. A lot of times we'll see this in the spring and in the winter months when we have our severe weather season in the spring and then that second severe weather season in the winter. But a level 3 in the summertime is now here, and that essentially means that scattered severe storms are likely for us today. What we're going to be watching for, unfortunately, all modes of severe weather possible. By and large, the damaging wind threat is going to be the most widespread for us. Heavy rain and large hail will also be possible. The large hail threat, a little bit on the lower end, that'll mainly be north of Atlanta, but still we could experience some even smaller hail as that line of storms makes its way through into the metro. Isolated tornadoes will also be possible, and that threat actually increased slightly, and I'm going to take you through the threats kind of threat by threat here in the next couple of minutes, so just kind of stick with me. We obviously have a lot to cover. Here's a look at just kind of a general overview of storm timing. Now, I will say throughout the morning the models have slowed this front down, because what this is essentially a boundary out ahead of a front that's going to be slowly moving through the southeast, and so that's what's going to bring us these storms, which makes the timing a little easier to pinpoint. Just like yesterday, we had those clusters of storms move through. Those are very small scale, so models really struggle on the timing and placement of those. But when you have larger scale features like a cold front, that kind of gives you a little more confidence in your forecast timing. So this is what we're looking at right now, and this could waver by an hour or two, but right now what we're looking at is about 4 to 6 p.m. for our far northern counties, so up in the mountains from places like Chattooga, northern Floyd County, all the way over to Rabun and Habersham County. 5 to 8 p.m. will be North Metro into downtown Atlanta. And then we could have some showers even out ahead of that line of storms start to impact some of our counties south of I-20, so down towards the airport and south around 7 o'clock. And that will continue through around 10 p.m. When it comes to our severe threat, we could have some lingering showers, maybe a rumble of thunder, even past 10 o'clock in the evening. But we think our severe threat should end past 10 o'clock tonight. Essentially, our ingredients won't be there any longer for severe weather, especially once we get that first line of storms to move in. That's going to kind of turn over our atmosphere and make it not necessarily prone for severe thunderstorms. So let's time everything out. Let's take you to 2 o'clock. This is the time the bell's going to be ringing for a lot of students to get out of school. For Fulton and DeKalb County, the first day of school, it's going to be hot. Temperatures will be in the low 90s generally, feeling hotter than that. A few storms will be out in Tennessee, and at this point, we'll be watching for severe weather to our north. As we head towards 4 o'clock, that's when that line of storms starts to push into North Georgia. So we're talking the Blue Ridge Mountains out into Townsend Union and Rabun County, potentially places like Chattooga County. That's when this front will start to move in, and then it will sink south as we head through the evening. So here's 5:30. Your evening commute, we'll say just to play it safe, anywhere from Cherokee County northward could be very messy if your commute time is usually around 5 o'clock, or even if you travel from downtown Atlanta northward, you'll essentially be running into those storms. So just keep that in mind. If you live in places like Cherokee County, you usually leave work around 5:30. You might have a messy second half of your commute as these storms start to push through. Taking you to 6 o'clock, that line continues to push south, impacting places from Hall County all the way out towards Carroll County. That line is going to continue to sink south, now impacting North Metro, again, as far north as Cherokee County, but potentially, or as far south as Cherokee County, rather. And this is going to start to push into parts of Bartow County, Cobb County, Gwinnett County. So around 6 o'clock, your dinner hour could definitely be very loud and electric out there as these storms move through. And as this line of storms moves through, expect damaging straight line wind. Again, that's going to be our primary threat. We're talking wind gusts 50 to maybe 70 miles per hour. Isolated gusts as high as 80, especially in the higher elevations of the mountains. That is possible. And we'll also watch for maybe an isolated tornado or two. Some hail could also be embedded within these storms, along with very heavy rain, and that heavy rain will absolutely diminish visibility, could potentially lead to some localized flooding in some spots, because not only is it a rainy day today, we also had all that rain from yesterday, so our ground is fairly saturated, something we'll be watching for. As we head towards 9 o'clock, the storms are pushing south of downtown into our southern counties, down from Troup County all the way over to Putnam County, still impacting places like Clark County over in Athens. A severe threat still present at this point, places south of I-20. Now notice, back out in Alabama, it's almost like we're going to get a second round of storms to kind of trail. This front, as it sinks through, is going to slow down. It's not technically going to make it all the way through Georgia. So the past couple of fronts we've had, they've actually cleared the state. That brought us some lower humidity, some really pleasant days. This front is not going to do that. It's going to slow down as it moves through the area, and it's going to stall, which will keep us unsettled through the week, but it's also going to introduce the chance for scattered showers and thunderstorms even as we head into the late evening hours. Again, at this point, I think that first round of storms kind of turns over our atmosphere, so I don't think we'll necessarily have the ingredients for severe weather, but we still could have a few rumbles of thunder and, of course, very heavy rain, which will only add to that chance for maybe some localized flooding if we do get that second round of rain through the later evening once that initial line passes on by. And again, we'll keep that chance for showers and thunderstorms through the overnight, but that severe threat should come to an end. I think as we head into the late evening, it'll be more so we'll be watching for maybe some isolated flooding in some low-lying areas, some flood-prone areas. I say it all the time. Atlanta just doesn't hold water very well. It is a big city with a lot of concrete. Concrete does not soak in water. So something we'll just be watching for as we head into the late evening. And if that does cause any issues on the roads into tomorrow morning, we'll let you know. So here's a look at our threats, kind of threat by threat here. Our two ones that we're going to focus on are going to be damaging winds and that tornado threat. So damaging wind, a 45% chance for damaging wind within several miles of that shaded area. So that's about a 50-50 shot, close enough that you're going to see some sort of damaging wind anywhere from parts of Chattooga County all the way out to Habersham County. That includes Hall County over near Lake Lanier. That does go into parts of Clark County as well. So north of the city, we'll be watching for damaging wind. In those areas, especially, again, the higher elevations of the mountains, you could experience wind gusts upwards of 80 miles per hour. I do think the general consensus will be 60 to 70, but our highest risk for wind is north of the city. But all of us are in a heightened risk for damaging wind as we go through the evening today. Now here's a look at the tornado risk. This has also been upgraded. A 5% chance, again, still low. This is a low end threat for us. It's just not none. But what I want you to focus on is that green 2% risk now does encompass all of Metro Atlanta. Earlier this morning, there was a 2% risk just in the higher elevations of the mountains. So now, as this front is starting to sink in, we're starting to see that we have those ingredients for spinning in the atmosphere, essentially, which creates that tornado risk. In the upper levels of the atmosphere, the wind is going to be moving, rushing. And so when you get that change in wind speed with height, that creates that wind shear in the atmosphere and ultimately results in a tornado threat. We're going to have wind ushering in from the south. You have a cold front that brings more of a northerly component to the wind, so that creates a turning of the winds in the atmosphere, hence our small tornado risk for today. But again, not none, so we will be watching for some isolated tornadoes, especially north of the city later this evening as everything rolls through. Now, on top of our severe weather, we're also having to deal with heat. It's going to be a hot and humid day. We have a heat advisory for our counties south of I-20 and east, anywhere from Putnam County to Troup County. Looks like over towards Greene County. Have the potential for some very high heat because you are going to be untouched for most of the day today. That southerly wind will bring in all that moisture from the Gulf and Atlantic. So it's going to be a hot and humid day. Feels like temperatures upwards of 106 degrees this afternoon. That heat advisory goes into effect at noon and goes through 8 o'clock. Now, again, all of this severe weather is along a front that is currently starting to push into parts of Arkansas. Eventually, we'll move into Tennessee. It looks like even already a severe thunderstorm warning firing up in parts of western Tennessee in the Memphis area. And that front will continue to sink south. But as I mentioned, it's not going to push all the way through. It's going to stall. So after today's first alert weather day, where we have that significant severe threat, we're going to stay unsettled with afternoon storms. Thursday, it looks almost like another complex of storms pushes through. That front's going to kind of start to lift on Thursday, so we might get a boundary to move through out ahead of it and bring us a more heightened chance for showers and thunderstorms. But nonetheless, expect a very unsettled week that will keep temperatures generally in the low 90s. And we could pick up upwards of 1 to 3 inches of rain. And today alone, I think we will be watching for those isolated higher amounts with all the heavy downpours, some of which could train as we get multiple waves of showers and thunderstorms into the late evening. So isolated flooding will be watched for, but I don't think that's our greatest threat, but it's definitely a possibility to have some flooding issues, especially in those flood-prone areas and streets across Metro Atlanta and north of the city with all the heavy rain coming in tonight and from yesterday. So we're kind of just adding on. Today, here's a look at Atlanta's most accurate 7-day forecast. The first alert weather day, widespread rain and storms. Damaging winds are going to be likely. The highest wind values will be experienced up in the higher elevations of the mountains north of the city. That doesn't mean that if you are in Metro Atlanta that you are going to be immune to lesser wind threat. I think all of us will experience damaging winds that will more than likely bring down trees, which of course also could bring down power lines. So we'll be monitoring power outages for you. Early reminder, have your phones charged because you don't want to have a dead phone and then your power go out and you can't charge it. So that's always a really good reminder because your phone will serve as a way to get weather alerts if they do pop up. Now's the time to plug in the Atlanta News First Alert Weather app. We've been updating it all morning long. That will also take you to our web story, which has extensive detail on everything I just covered for you. We'll be constantly updating that throughout the afternoon. So again, you'll want to have your phone charged throughout the day today, that if your power goes out, you have a way to, of course, a lot of people use that as their alarm to get up the next day, to get your kids ready for school. Also, of course, it'll give you those important weather alerts if any severe weather rolls into your area. So an important reminder right now to have your devices charged as severe weather is going to be likely this evening. And for some of you, it'll be while you're asleep. So you'll want to have those alerts, especially as you're trying to go to bed tonight and get some sleep. So as we go into the rest of the week, we'll stay unsettled, temperatures in the low 90s. It'll be a very summer-like week ahead of us. Today's the day we're really focusing on. Not only are we dealing with the storms, but the heat. So a lot to get through today. But once we get through today, we'll kind of settle into an unsettled week, but not one that is going to be quite as significant as today. So our team of meteorologists will be here all throughout the morning, the afternoon, to keep you prepared and ready for the storms on the way this evening. And we will, of course, continue to update you on the app, on air, online. So be sure that you are paying attention to the day today, and we'll get you through it on this first alert weather day. And I appreciate you spending some time with us this morning.